Hello, everyone. I'm Auxa from Ideanote, and I'm very excited to tell you that today we are talking with Super from Buffer. Buffer is actively sharing their knowledge and tips and lessons on a number of various subjects, such as like company culture, marketing, social media marketing, also like remote teams, and just how to build great products in general. So today we will be talking about something slightly different. We'll be talking about how Buffer works with ideas and what is a good idea at Buffer. So maybe a good way to start is if Super, you could tell us a bit more about what Buffer does actually and your role in the team.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. So Buffer in general is a company where we help other brands build their communities online and help them sell their products and services. So we primarily do that today through social media tools. We have 3 different products. We have Buffer Publish, Analyze, and Reply. And customers can come in, choose the products that they want, sign up online, and it's fully self-service where we have a team that will help support you in using the products and growing your business. And as a company, we're about 80 people that are distributed worldwide. So we don't have a home office. We work completely remotely, and we serve about 80,000 customers today. So specifically for me, I'm the product manager on Buffer Publish. So that's one of our products that helps you get your content together for all your social media channels, plan it with your team, send it out on a schedule that you decide, and then look back and see how you want to change your strategy for how that worked for you and your team.
As I mentioned, like today we're going to talk about ideas and how your team works with ideas internally. So I was just wanting to hear like your take on how ideas coming from employees, like how are they important in Buffer in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we think about ideas in different contexts. So it sort of depends on what the idea is around. For example, there might be ideas that are around how we can grow our customer base, which would be pretty different than ideas for what features we should build, which might be different than ideas for what we do internally as a team to improve our own culture or how we serve customers. So I think it depends on the context of what that idea is around. But the common thread across all the ideas, I would say, in terms of importance is good ideas come from everywhere in the company. I think we have all heard that as a saying and a phrase, but it really is true. And I think the harder part might be for most companies to create an environment where everyone feels comfortable sharing those ideas. I think there's a few different key things that cultures need to have in place before teammates feel really open and willing to share those ideas with the rest of the team, with their bosses, with whoever in the organization might be able to make that change.
I think that's a very, very good point. Could you tell what are these key factors to make sure that you have this actual open culture where people are comfortable to share ideas?
Yeah, I can share a few notes from what we've found. It might not be for every single team, but I think that at least for us, the key things around getting people to share more openly, the biggest one is probably having a high sense of trust and psychological safety on a team. So Google's done a lot of great research on this around psychological safety being the number one contributor to a happy and productive team, even more than having the right talent on board, having the right training on board. It's just sort of crazy how big of an impact that has on a team's culture and productivity. So I think that's a really key piece where anyone who's looking to get more ideas from their teammates and employees might want to look at that and see how comfortable do people feel with their teammates with sharing openly what they actually think rather than what they think is the right answer, what they think other people want to hear. And in order to do that, I think the other piece too is normalizing that of sharing ideas very frequently. So if you create a culture where ideas come up often, where people share them openly, and it becomes very okay and normal to say, that's a great idea, but because of XYZ reasons, we're not going to do that right now. If that is something that happens once every month across the team, then naturally people are going to feel a little scared, a little hesitant to share their idea if they know there's a chance it gets shut down and they're the only one that had an idea that then didn't get acted on. But if you're in an environment where, let's say every week we're on a team of 10 people are sharing ideas every week, there's new things coming up. Sometimes they get built, sometimes it's not the right choice for the company at the time. then it really becomes just a normal part of day to day. If you're in a team, for example, where you give each other feedback all the time on things that are going well, things that could be improved, then it just becomes a normal part of the day. But if you don't ever get feedback, then any little thing that you even hear about, where if someone says, hey, in that last meeting, you kind of mentioned this, but it would have been better if we presented it this way. That might hit you really hard if that's something you just don't hear very often. So I think ideas are very similar, where if you have an environment where ideas come up really frequently and it becomes okay and normal that most ideas probably won't see light of day, and that's totally fine, then I think that encourages people to share more openly, give insights as they find them. Because really it comes from every single person on the team, because everyone has their own unique perspective.
So from what I hear, what you're saying is like there's one thing that like finding a process that works, right? But it's also not something you can do just once, right? It really has to be ingrained in that company culture that it becomes the new norm. And
I think so.
We here at Buffer, you do a set of things on how to manage ideas. And there's especially one we wanted to talk about today, which is called the Growth Ideas Log. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, happy to. So as I mentioned earlier, we sort of have a different process for ideas depending on what type of idea it is. And one of the types that we think about is a growth idea. So growth ideas are things that are specifically changes or tweaks to how we guide customers to find the right plan for them on Buffer, how we help them find the right plan, the right product, and how we help them stay on the plan and product and continue to get value. When we look at growth specifically through MRR, so monthly recurring revenue is the way that we measure our growth. If you have an idea that could contribute to that, we ask you to add it to this growth ideas log, which lives in Dropbox Paper. So Dropbox Paper is a tool just like Google Docs. So it's really just a list of these ideas. You can add your idea in there and put it just in any phrasing that you want of what you think the idea should be, why you think we should be doing that idea. And it goes into this giant list. So, and then every week when we get together in our growth syncs, we have a few key people that get together as part of this growth tribe. We'll look at those ideas, think about any new ones that we want to bring in. And if there are ones that stand out to us, what we'll do is we'll evaluate them on a simple framework that we found online that other companies have used. And that framework is ICE. So impact, confidence, and effort. So impact is how big of an impact does this thing have? So for example, introducing a brand new product obviously could have a massive impact. So 1 out of 10, that might be a 10. Changing copy on a page that is not very well trafficked could be a 1, where it's just not going to have that big of an impact. Confidence is how sure are we that this is going to have the impact we think it'll have. So if we're looking at MRR, how sure are we that this thing would have the growth that we think it is? So that again is 1 to 10. And then effort is how much effort would it take to develop this? So again, a brand new product that we're bringing to market might be a 10, a feature might be a 5 or 6, and some copy change might be a 1. So what we do is we get those different scores and then we just average them together for that idea. And that average just becomes the number for that idea. I think something important to share with that is it's not crazy scientific. There's no precise way to know if something's a 5 or a 6. It's just calibrated against the other ideas that you and your team look at. So in that sense, I wouldn't sweat the details of, how do we define a 5 very specifically, or what exactly makes a 7? Because what you're looking for is not a precise score for this specific idea. What you're looking for is when you have dozens of ideas, which ones obviously are much bigger impact and which ones are obviously much lower impact. I mean, my advice to anyone starting off, or even as you get going, is don't get too bogged up in the details of what exactly the score should be. Just get started, and some trends will naturally emerge around which things seem more impactful than others.
So what happens to those ideas that receive a low score?
So one of the things I'll frame this with is at Buffer, one of our biggest values is transparency. So because we're a remote team, it's especially important for us to be able to share everything openly so everyone has the context. All the little conversations you have maybe in an in-person office at, grabbing lunch, grabbing food, just walking through the hallways that you share. Oh, by the way, forgot to tell you about this. That just doesn't as naturally happen when you're fully remote. So to counter that, what we've done is really lean on everything being very transparent. So we have transparent email, transparent financials. Basically, every document in the company is transparent. And so that really helps everyone have a broader context of what's going on. And we try to extend that to the ideas process as well. We weren't always good at this. So we used to have a process where our customer advocates could submit ideas for the product team to consider, and they would just add ideas to it as time goes on. And what we eventually found is we weren't acting on many of those ideas. As I mentioned earlier, you only have so much time to build new things. So a small percentage of them would get built, but the rest of them would really have no answer. And that got to be very frustrating, I think, for some of the teammates, which I totally would feel the same way. If you're throwing ideas into this black box, essentially, and you have no idea what's happening with them, it can kind of feel pointless after a period of time where you feel like you're putting all this effort in, but you're not getting anything back about what's going on with that idea. So in that context, what we did is we changed that whole process. And now when customer advocates give ideas around specific features, we always try to loop back with an answer. And the answer often is, we're not going to build this, and here's a quick reason why. And I think that's totally fine. I think people are used to, knowing that every idea they have is not going to be prioritized at a company level, but they just want to be able to share that idea, contribute to the team, and be heard. And I think a lot of great ideas do come from that. So again, as long as you can normalize that experience, make them feel like their ideas are being considered, actually have a framework to consider them, and then communicate back if they're not going to build it, then I think that works out better for everyone.
Yeah, no, that definitely sounds like a very important point. And I think there's another very important lesson in the story you just shared with us is that basically it sounds like it's not enough just to be open or just to have a process of collecting ideas, because that's what you did in the beginning as well, right?
Yes.
It's also important to make sure that there's almost automatic process afterwards that does something with those ideas, right? Because just a pile of ideas, it's not that valuable after all, right?
Yeah,
So
I agree. And that's why I think maybe a lesson that we learned from that is, if you're starting a new initiative to collect ideas, it almost feels a little counterintuitive, but this is my personal opinion. I would say that don't start with every single person at the company. Unless you're very small, then it makes sense. But I wouldn't start a brand new process and say, okay, we're going to collect ideas. Everyone at the company share all of your ideas and put it all into this, initial framework or document or whatever. Maybe really challenging to go from 0 to 100 that quickly. And then you have this giant list of ideas that everyone's taken time to do. You may not have the bandwidth to reply to every single one all at the same time. You may change your process for how you filter those ideas. All of those things evolve over time, depending on your personal company, your context, where you are, where your goals are. And so doing all of that all at once might be overwhelming and make everyone sort of feel like, oh, I took this time to share these ideas, but nothing's really happening with them. And it might kind of feel like a waste of time. But if you start smaller and say, okay, what's one of the key company initiatives we have that we want to focus on? So if your goal is growth or ship a new product or land a new customer or whatever that might be, crowdsource some ideas around that specific thing from key people who are involved in that product from different teams and different parts of the organization. See how that goes. Try something out, maybe the ICE framework, maybe something else that works for your company. See how that goes through one round of iteration. Reflect on it after you try that. And then as you iterate on that process, as you get more comfortable with it, then you can open it up to more and more people as you feel like you can handle the volume that might come in there.
I think that's an excellent tip. So these are specific examples of some value you added to your product just because you were open to collect ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that in software companies, especially fast growing startups, there's sometimes a sense that most of the ideas come from the product team or the CEO. And I'd say that actually isn't always the case. And maybe most of the time it comes from different people as well. So if you think about all these different features, the people who are talking to customers all day, every day are your customer support team, your marketing team, your engineers who are building the product that might find something interesting that could serve customers. So it can come from anywhere. And I would say if you restrict yourself to just saying these people are the only ones that can come up with ideas, then really you're hampering the whole business and the whole team. So yeah, to your point about opening up ideas and collecting them from everyone is not just about including more people, but it makes great business sense too. It's sort of a win-win on both sides, the culture side internally and for the business objectives overall. One other thing I would say is this definitely depends on the size of the company. I know we at 80 people are very different than maybe a large enterprise that might have very different constraints or requirements for how this process works. But having some sort of frame for what types of ideas you want is, I think, important to share with the team that you're collecting from. So if you just say, give us your ideas, you don't know what you're going to get. It could be all over the place. It could be really difficult to sift through, and maybe some of them are not that helpful for what the business needs at that time. But think about the contrast between share ideas and just seeing what comes in versus saying, we want to improve our new MRR this month by X% and serve this exact target customer. What ideas do you have around how we can do that more effectively? That is going to get you a lot more focused around what the objective of the business is going towards. You really help your team think about brainstorming the right way, and they know that the ideas they're providing are going to be more relevant, and they're probably going to be more willing to share it because they know it's focused on the objective that you set out. So having some clear objective that you're collecting ideas around feels like a really important step. And then, yeah, like you said, just get started. You're not going to get it right the first time. And I think almost embracing that and saying, if you're getting started with Ideanote or whatever the tool might be that they're using, just get going on it. Just start collecting ideas and reflect on the process, iterate on it, improve on it, and it'll get better over time. But there is no magic solution where you're going to spend, 6 months thinking about this idea process and then roll it out and it's going to be perfect from day one. So avoid wasting that time if you can, and just get going knowing that, yeah, you're going to make some mistakes, but it's totally fine. You can improve and iterate on it over time and it'll get better.
Thank you so much for your time, Super. I feel like this was a very valuable conversation for us, but also for our readers. And I feel like we touched upon some very specific and actionable tips that I hope that other teams and other businesses, they can take away and they can actually apply it and collect great ideas. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Great to chat through all this. I hope that was helpful for your readers and followers, and hope they get started with some process.